त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनम् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्
Hi, this is Amalia Eon Karis.
Hey everyone, it's Satya, and you're listening to Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda.
सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनम् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्
I can't believe all that we've been through together here in this space, and I know today we really need to talk about just looking at where we've been in this podcast, where we're gonna go, what's happening now, what's gonna be happening. And so we just brought on a guest for the first time, and we've had the last 7 episodes with her. Her name is Isa. She's amazing. And actually, as a result of that, we've had a lot of feedback on massive healings happening even in family lineages, and including in mine. Actually, I'll have to tell that story. But it's just a really exciting time. And I think right now, obviously on the planet, there's a lot of pausing and integration and looking at new paths and grounding in the big stuff. And so I wanted to just jump on today, Amalia, and just talk about all this stuff. And because I feel like our listeners and I feel like our friends like don't even know, everything. I mean, they don't even know where we're at right now, where we're going. And you've shared so much in this podcast. It's kind of unprecedented, actually, because it's very rare for a spiritual teacher to talk about her sex life, for one thing, and shared the depths of it that you have, which I really appreciate you for, and I know that all of our listeners do too. But because I've known you as a teacher, I've known you as a friend, and the things that you have talked about are profound, and I have such respect for you. And I knew some of the things, and I have my own stories that I know you're always like, okay, don't you want to tell that story, Satya? And I'm kind of like, oh, yes, no, yes, no. Like, so it's a lot. And I'm just reflecting on all of this, and I want to ask you, like, what was it that that propelled you so much to share all that? I know you were feeling so called to talk about all of these things, and I know even in the recent episodes we had we were talking about ritualistic sexual abuse, and I know, Amalia, there's some experiences still that you have yet to share on our show, and so I guess my question right now is just, what has this been like for you, and where are you at now? I know there's more you want to share, but yeah, what has this been like for you, and where are you at now?
Thank you, Satya. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Well, it was scary to start this podcast, but it was something that was coming up for actually years before we actually started recording. I think it started after I left India and came back to the US. I found that I found people putting me in a box that was not correct. Like, they would see me as their spiritual teacher, and then they assumed certain things of me, or they expected me to behave in a certain way. And I found that I had like these different communities who knew me in a very narrow-minded reality. Like those who knew my past and, ex-lovers and people who were friends of mine socially didn't know my spiritual nature. And those who knew me in a spiritual context and knew me for my spiritual work had no idea about my past. And I was always kind of scared that the two would meet. I was worried about what would happen if they heard stories of the other. Like in my personal life, I was worried that the friends I had and people who knew me from my past would hear that I was a spiritual teacher and then mock me, like, oh yeah, right, you're a spiritual teacher. Like, how can you do that? I know you when, or I saw you do this and that. And I was afraid that my students and that those who knew me in a spiritual context or through meditation and the work that I was teaching or from my book would then hear about my past and be like, well, that discredits me as a teacher. And this separation was really bothering me. And what was bothering me more was the different teachers and spiritual people that I met who were out of alignment with their sexual energy. So there were, you know, I think this whole podcast really got started after I did this sex rant, because I had an experience of getting healed from my own sexual wounding. And during the session, the male practitioner made a really strange sort of remark, like got turned on by my story, my past story. And it disturbed me so bad that I went on this like anger rant, like practitioners like this should be banned. And it was like me pointing the finger, like the self-righteous finger. And I'm like, okay, well, we all have this wounding, you know, it's not just me. And I started to see that every time I went for healing and going to different healers, I would also see the shadow of the healer. And then I started to notice that most healers have heavy shadows. And I started to look at my own very deeply and realize that, you know, anyone who's had a Kundalini awakening has explored by force of nature their shadow side and their light side. They have come face to face with the darkest dark that lives inside of them and the brightest light. So they might have fluctuated between like feeling like a savior for mankind to then feeling like, you know, the devil lives within them and they can't control it and they're being, you know, possessed and haunted and they have to go through exorcisms and whatnot. So anyone who's gone through, it is a pathway for anyone who's seeking enlightenment. And I think it's the pathway that most spiritual teachers never talk about, and they're all scared of it and they're kind of, you know, skirting around it. And then in working in India, I was working side by side with some very powerful gurus as a business partner. And I saw a lot of their shadow and it deeply disturbed me. But at the same time, I was like, well, if they all come to find out about my past or the fact that, you know, I'm having this relationship with a married man or something, that they're going to come after me. And in India, when a spiritual teacher is taken down, it's not lightly. Like one of the spiritual teachers that I met, you know, was put in prison for having an affair with a divorcee. Now, mind you, he was single, but he was a brahmachari. And I just watched this whole thing unfold and I could laugh about it because, you know, I'm from San Francisco, and like us in the US, if we heard that a single guy had an affair with a divorcee, that's like no big deal. But in India, it was a big deal because of how he was representing himself spiritually. And, you know, that guy has millions of followers around the world. And he was found out to have this huge shadow nature where he had all the females like sign agreements, you know, to have certain sexual relationships with him and keep it secret. And I just saw, you know, our sexuality holds all this shadow. Like everybody has a sexual closet. Every single person, I don't care who you are, there is sexual shame, there is toxic shame hiding in your psyche. And so I felt that in order for me to find my own healing and to find my own true pleasure and to find a relationship that was truly healthy, I needed to expose my shadows so that my students and my friends don't either put me on a pedestal or have something that they can knock me down with also.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
one of my favorite things about you, like as a teacher, because I had experiences when I was younger in religion and cult type stuff, and my eyes were wide open. And so I've never been a person who would want to like follow a guru or, or put all my, give all my power to somebody in that kind of way. And I was consistently over and over again refreshed and relieved by by just your realness, and even if sometimes, that might just be very human or messy, or, it was so grounded, and I was just appreciating that. I would just, numerous times, like, I was just like, oh, thank goodness, thank goodness.
It was really scary. I remember I reached out to my ex and told him, hey, I'm going to speak on a podcast about some of the things that happened in our relationship. I'm just warning you in case you hear it. And he said to me, are you insane? Like, why would you share that? You're going to lose so many of your students and listeners and followers. And I said, because first of all, I don't want followers. Now we say followers on like YouTube and all this. Okay, someone wants to subscribe to the channel. Someone wants to listen to what I have to say. That's different. Someone wants to read my book or come into my mystery school. It's different because I don't see myself as an authority. Like if they see me as a guru, they're missing the point of what I'm teaching, which is like, find your sovereignty and come to the terms and find your right relation with yourself. I'm not here to be in a hierarchical model. And so I don't want someone putting me on that pedestal. And I definitely don't want someone trying to knock me off it, because there's horrible people in the world that are just so jealous and spiteful. And if they see you succeeding, they're just doing whatever they can to like throw poison in your path and like tell you you're this horrible, awful person. And so I'm going to tell you what's wrong about me. I don't need you to tell me. Part of what I'm teaching is like self-reflection. Like, we should know our own weaknesses. We should be able to sit with the truth of the totality of ourselves, not just the part that we want everyone else to see. Like, I want to be a naked soul standing there and allow you to be a naked soul, and you're still loved and you're still worthy and you're still valuable.
Yes.
Like, there's such a part of me my whole life, because of the sexual trauma I dealt with as a child, that was feeling unworthy of love. I have a horrible narcissistic psychopathic mother and a psychopathic sister and brother. And so, and then being raised in a cult with psychopathic leaders, and then seeing the sickness, just like I was raised by psychopaths and consistently abused again and again, and so stuck in that trauma bond and so waiting for their approval that they're never going to get. I'm never going to get from them. I'm never going to get the approval of my mother. I'm never going to get the love. I was severely neglected. And so I found myself attracting those same people in teachers, in husbands, in business partners, in friends. Like, the amount of betrayal I have been through, the amount of false accusations I have gone through, community after community. And I'm sort of like, you know what, this is all, okay, I could lay down and be the victim and say, oh, poor me. But what I'm realizing is like, this has like been beautifully orchestrated for me to point out the sickness of humanity that lives in all of us, and this unrooting of the parasite at the deepest level. Like, for us to truly embody our sexuality and live as creators, we have to unroot that hook that has been like a spell cast on all of humanity. I don't think anyone here is immune to it. I think some of us come in with darker hooks and like lineage of agreements and spells that have been passed down, like you noticed in your family line. And many of us, we were born into a family of abusers, or born into a lineage where the abuse just keeps being passed down, and the perpetrator just it keeps happening. The pattern keeps happening until someone says enough. And for me, it was like the pattern stops with me. I've been saying that since I was a child. I do not want to act like my mother or be like her. And so I did everything in my power I could to unroot and look at the sort of toxic seeds that live in me and address them. And so I went to healer after healer after healer since I'm, 18. I think I started when I was 18. And when I found myself being told, okay, now you're to be the healer, it was, I was 30 years old when this spirit and all, the veils got completely demolished at my dad's passing. And suddenly I could hear and sense and see between all the realms, and this whole committee of a council came to me and showed me the seat I held on the council in another dimension. I mean, it was just completely absurd to me at the time. I was a business consultant, and it was saying to me like, you are on this council and you are to do this shamanic healing now. And I hated that idea. I was like, okay, I know I'm here for a mission, but I think it's just to like help businesses be mission driven. And they're like, no, it's to clear these genetic patterns in these past lives and all this mystical stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not a teacher. You don't know where I'm from. Like, I come from this darkness. Like, this is my mother. This is my sister. Like, this is what I've seen. I don't have that innocence. Like, I wasn't born. I believed I was not born with innocence. It was stolen from me at like 2 years old. So I had to like reclaim that innocence. And the only way I could reclaim it was to relive all the memories. And suddenly I'm a spiritual teacher and people see me sort of in the healed side of it, not in the traumatic side of it. And they think that I was just born that way. I'm like, no. I need to share. This was not an easy path. This wasn't something that was just granted to me. That, I went through a lot, and I don't want to wear the badge of victim either. But there's a balance, right? Like, we have to share our story in order for people to realize like there's a reason for some of the dark things that happen. And I think that right now we're living at a time where so much is being exposed. Like, so many people are doing this work, but nobody's really talking about the elephant in the room half the time, which to me is connected to the sexual energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I could do like 10 episodes right now. There's so much going through my mind, and everything you're saying is making me think of one more thing that is a whole episode we have to talk about. And when you're saying like the badge of victim, and that's been something that's kind of been I've been thinking about lately. And I think that, we've all been affected, and in a way we're all victims. And that it's okay. We don't have to be, we're so strong, and the people who are quote victims are usually so strong, right? And we don't want to think that we've been that, or that but it is true when it gets to a point where it's like martyrdom and we're wearing it like a crown, then we become almost the abuser, right, to other people around us and to ourselves. And then we just self-inflict. And so I don't know why, I just wanted to just make that clarity, because that was just something I was feeling, and it's been coming up in my family lately. So I wanted to just say that, because there's really nothing wrong with being a victim, and in fact, I think a lot of us are like, oh, no, I would, like that's a hard one, right, to feel.
Yeah, and I think we get stuck in the whole push-pull of it all, like oscillating. So,
and then that's even where some victim blaming comes from, because like we disown that part, and it's like, okay, well, I couldn't be that, and then so we kind of like become disconnected from it, right? But anyway, I don't want to veer off, because we've got
that's perfect, because my goal with this podcast is to embody. Like, so when I say embodiment, when you have a spiritual awakening or you're on the spiritual path, it's very easy to the beginning stages of awakening are very simple. You're opening up to something much larger than yourself. You're seeing yourself as a universal being that is beyond your body. And you start connecting with the angels and your guides and seeing that there's so much more beyond death, beyond this reality. But then how do you bring that knowledge into your daily life, into your physical form? How do you get beyond all the false programming that, you know, you're this limited physical self? And so most spiritual people I found start to split. They have like the spiritual life and then their daily life. Like they go to work and they don't talk about their spirituality, or they don't use their spiritual practices through their work. Like they don't meditate in their business meetings or bring their spiritual practices into business. We're seeing it more now, thank God, because this is an integration that is needed in order for us to evolve as humans. But most people keep these things very separated. And if we really want to experience the human potential, we need to embody our full soulful self. And so the mission I'm on is to awaken that knowingness inside the self, that connection to the God source, the I am inside the chest, to activate the star seed, what I call the star seed, which is that spark of light that lives inside the chest, that once it's awakened, you start knowing things you didn't even know are possible to know, or where they came from. You start having access to and a sense of self that is far beyond your family line, you know, what you were taught in school, what you think you're here to do. You know, it goes way beyond your vocation. And so how do we embody that? And we need to break the patterns that are in the lowest chakras. The second and the first chakra are so dense and so hard. And if we don't talk about sex and money and power and like right use of will and sort of our identity,
because it's all in the same spot.
It's all that lower chakra energy, and it is the place of the deepest shadow. And if we look at the earth and just humans and like what's wrong in the earth, it's like we all know that, you know, the sex industry and the war industry and the financial industry and the medicine industry are the most corrupt industries on the planet, because they're governing the thought forms of all of us. They're keeping us enslaved and entrapped and in fear that we can't heal ourselves, that we're not in control of our health, that we're not in control of our bodies, that we're not able to be, you know, there's people who have and those who don't have, like we're not all abundant by birth. You know, there's class systems, there's all these like false realities that when you open to your starseed, you're like, no, hey, my birthright is this. Like, I'm not going to live by those laws or by that limited perspective. Like my family, they never encouraged me to go to school, or they never looked at my report card. They never talked to me about college. Like I'm the first person to graduate high school, let alone college. And there was never a celebration about it. It was ignored. And if I mention it, it's like, you're bragging. It's like, but wait a second, like, where did that come from? Like, that's so much oppression. Like, no, we have to keep you down. So if I followed the path of my family, I would be homeless, an addict, or dead by now. Mm-hmm. If I allowed those programs to run, or I would be a zombie and a slave to the system, like a complete slave. So I had to break program after program after program. And right now, like the sexual one, the one that's your shame, like where you hide your fantasies, where you hide your power dynamics, where you're trying to maybe manipulate, or especially when you come into spiritual gifts, like you start realizing, wow, I can control everything with my mind, with my thoughts, with my feelings. And if you start using that on people, which is dark magic, which is how most of the world is operating, when you become aware of that and you're like, hey, I don't want to be a part of this mind control program. I don't want to infect others or try to control. And we all have to face that need to control. Like some of us, when your Kundalini opens, if you haven't rectified your right use of will, you will misuse it. You just will. And so you have to find a teacher or a group of people to hold you accountable that you trust are wholesome enough, that aren't going to like veer you in the wrong direction. And I'll tell you, anyone who wakes up to their spiritual power, there's going to be a whole group of dark hawks waiting to swoop in on you, to steal your energy, to feed off your energy, to lead you astray. And you see, unfortunately, a lot of spiritual teachers are doing that. I see that a lot in the tantric, you know, there's all this neo-tantric energy happening in the West, which, you know, tantric philosophy and practices are sacred, but they have been perversely used for sex addicts and people who are feeding off of other people's energy, and it's so mixed up. So you think you're someone who's like me, has a lot of sexual trauma, and you want to heal your sexuality, so you go to some tantric healer or some sexual healer, and you find that they're just perpetrating you again. I mean, what a mind fuck, excuse my French, but you will be stuck. And this is what's happened to me. Like, I go for healing, and then the person you're trusting to heal you is then perpetrating you again, and you're stuck in this cycle of abuse. So I have, you know, I'm on a mission to expose all of this through my own story, through using myself as a vulnerable mirror to the world. Like, all you spiritual teachers out there, all you healers, you all have this. You know, I'm sorry if you think that you're somehow so whole, healthy, and complete that you have no shadow. Like, come sit with me, I'll show you the shadow, because I happen to have a gift of seeing shadow. And to me, it sits like the elephant in the room. It's like, is anyone going to talk about how this person is completely misusing their energy right now? And I'm so nervous that I will misuse it, that if I don't expose it myself, I'm afraid that people will just like inevitably give me their energy because they're looking for guidance and they're looking for a leader, and they don't know how to own their field. So this parasite lives in all our fields. So when we're feeling, I don't know, subservient, weak, when that old pattern is just playing on loop, we attract these cycles of abuse. We can see it right now, just having a heyday in the government systems all over the world. The pandemic is here. People are, you know, the fear porn is through the roof, and everybody's just lapping it up. I mean, nobody can escape what's going on. So the only way we can escape it is to pop out of it and to create a field of resonance to see truth. Like, we have to purposefully create that. And that's what what I found in the podcast is that every time we come together, you and I, Satya, our desire to heal this, our desire to be vulnerable with each other, and then to share it with others, and bring Isa into the field also, who has the same intention to heal her sexuality and be whole and complete. It just creates this alchemical container, and we're seeing it ripple out into, like, so many people have been texting and emailing, students in my school that are having like spontaneous sexual healings. Memory is coming back, and it's very uncomfortable to sit with. But when we face it, when we really look at it, it has no more power over us.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you're saying too is directly what happens when you're a student in your school. I mean, I had been, seeing shadow and working on myself since I was a little kid. And then since I was 16, exploring various forms of therapy and constantly, reading every book there was and researching, getting my master's degree in psychology, therapy here, therapy there, workshops here, and in your school, literally everything you just said is 100% true. Like, it just, you wake up in a newer, bigger way than you ever have before. And at least for me, and then, it's kind of like, then it's like, okay, I knew things before, and but now I really, now it's just off the charts. And then it's like, how to contain that. And you you always put the place of power in me or in another person. So yeah, so people, what you're saying about people, wanting to give their power, or they're looking for something so much that, we would elect somebody for president because we're so like, please, change, we don't know what to do, and just, but I mean, it's trickling everywhere. And so, and you and I, we came together on this podcast, and we were scared. We were like, let's not tell anyone. Let's not tell, and our producer's like, here, you need to, advertise here and let people know here. And what about your email list? We're like, no, we'll just not do that for now. Let's just keep it on the down low, and we're not playing roles here on this podcast as therapists, or as like, we're not playing that role. We're just girlfriends, who happen to be aware, and we are just healing ourselves the best way we can.
Yeah, I think there's enough teachers in the world. I mean, technically I'm a teacher, technically I have a school, but it's not a typical school. Like, and my whole thing is like, we need to illuminate the shadows and really look at our own shadows. Our shadows are our biggest teachers. I'm just here to be a mirror. And I can use all these kind of new age words to describe what I do, but people don't understand it. So I have to say, okay, it's a school and I'm a teacher, but it's really like a dojo. You're coming there to work things out, to grapple with yourself, and to really look at all the places you're lying to yourself. And then the school and forms a council around you to sort of mirror back and trigger the crap out of you. I mean, that's really what that's part of what I'm here to do, is like to trigger people. Because I found that one of the reasons why my family rejected me so strongly was just my silent presence, because I could see as a child, and I was just always looking at the energy field and watching, like, why are you so triggered by me? Like, I'm just here loving you. I'm just like, oh, you're not seeing me. You're seeing your own fears. You're seeing this reflection. And then I just had to be that scapegoat for them to work through their own self-rejection and try not to take it personally. And I could do that for a certain period of time until, a small child really can't handle that energy. But as a teacher, man, I'm really good at it. Like, I know every single person who comes to the school will have one moment, if not more than one, or a serious period of time. Some people, it's like a year, where they hate me. Like, they just project all their crap on me, and they absolutely hate me. And then I just have faith, and I know it's not about me. Because I can clearly see what's going on with them. Like, they've come in with this huge thing, they've projected it, and I can just hold steady for them to move through it. And those are the most profound moments. Like, when they pop through the other side and I get that phone call months, days, years later, and they're saying like, whoa, I see it now. I see what you think, you, and I love you. And I'm like, high five. But most of them, I warn them at first. I'm like, you're going to hate me for doing this, but I have to reflect this back to you. And so now, thanks to my family for being the, psychopaths that they were, that I learned how to hold steady when people are unsteady, when people are projecting like crazy, and they're really, normally that happens when they're really close to breakthrough. Like, the self-sabotage comes up like crazy. It does it when the old patterns break. We start grasping and flailing around because there's no new structure firmly in place. So, a lot of the work I'm doing right now is, I'm not doing one-on-one work so much. Like, I'll meet them when they're ready to be met, because the activations are getting so powerful. And the projections, it's sort of like, I don't want to hold all that. Like, start clearing, and what you'll know when you're ready to talk to me one-on-one. And sure enough, it's been working like that. And I'm so pleased with, first of all, thank you to Satya for being so brave to do this with me, because I tried to do this with another friend and colleague before Satya, and we'd recorded a number of episodes. We never made them live because we were terrified to put it out there. We both got triggered. She got so triggered, and then it never came to be. And then a year later, Satya showed up, and I was like, ooh, we're kind of on the same, maybe she's gonna be the co-host I'm looking for. And we talked about it for like, I don't know how long before we recorded, and we started it as like basically as a hobby. It still is like a hobby. It's our passion project, because we are so dedicated to finding the wholeness and the love and the healing that we so desperately need. And through our seeking and discovery of it, I'm very pleased to hear how it's affecting our listeners. So if you're one of those people listening who our stories have affected in a positive way, or we've triggered the crap out of you, please write to us, let us know, because this healing field is getting really, really strong. And it's very exciting, and it's sparking so much creativity and inspiration for me. I decided to stop writing my monthly moon blog that I was doing diligently for 8 years, twice a month for 8 years, and I'm going to focus that energy more on love, sex, and the hidden agenda. And I'm just excited, like all these wheels are turning, like who are we going to bring on next, and to really have create this potent field.
This is kind of like I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but this is kind of like our coming out episode. I feel like we're coming out of the closet.
We are, I have to admit to all the listeners that I have purposefully not shared the podcast with my current email list and with all those who know me as a spiritual teacher. I started like a separate list. I only told the students in the school, and I just sort of mentioned it. I didn't really tell them multiple times. I just said, oh, there's this podcast. And I think I sent one email that they probably glanced at and didn't, maybe they were like, what is that? And they didn't realize. I talked to a friend the other day, and she's like, you have a podcast? Like, why is that not on your Instagram? And I was like, she looked at my Instagram. She's like, it doesn't say podcast here. When did you become a podcast host? And I was like, right. Oh, well, it's been over a year.
And then the people who listen to the podcast are like, wait, you have a mystery school? Like,
yeah, I know. That was really funny. And I was like, oh yes, I have. It is time for the integration to happen. So really, as I integrate my worlds and let you all know that, yes, there's a mystery school. It's called knowtheself.com. And you can join it and meet the other students in there who are in this huge healing vortex and clearing all the old programs and learning how to own their boundaries and master their energy and activate their sovereignty and ground their mission in the world. We're doing some big work there, and it's super exciting. And just thank you, Satya, for being such an anchor for me, and the brave explorer that you are, willing to look at all this shadow stuff. And there's so much more to share. So oh
gosh, there's so much more to share. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, I think we've mentioned it before, but, so Amalia and I, we had just been WhatsApping, that's kind of how, part of how this got started. And we were just, I mean, if somebody could get a hold of those WhatsApps and just listen to all of them, it would be like a Netflix series. It would be like the number one. I mean, thinking, gosh.
It's juicy stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, if for all of you who listen, I mean, just when you listen to Amalia speak on a subject, it's the way, I feel like the way you put things together, Amalia, and the way you're so grounded about things and the way you can speak is so powerful. And I was always telling you need to be speaking, enough of this other stuff, get out there. And even though I think you had been speaking in front of hundreds of people before, there was this new way you needed to come forward, and you were like, and you wanted to, and you knew it, but it was like something about our synergy just like made it happen. And I love what you're saying about, the integration thing, because I mean, I am so done with having to split things. And, I have an extreme Christian family, and I was born and raised that way, and I have my own spiritual beliefs, but it was like I felt like I had to hide my other stuff, or like, oh God, I hope they never listen to this podcast, or oh, what if they think that my sound healing, my sound baths and my retreats are like, witchy stuff, and and it's like, and then so bringing together all of that, and these we need people from these sort of like messed up places, like from all these worlds that you mentioned. Like we have to bridge this, we have to bring it all together unapologetically, all of these different aspects of ourselves, and allow ourselves to expand, and allow all of those things to flow together, and see how they do flow inside and outside of each other. Just like with my stuff, I mean, I've been doing deep spiritual work for so long, and therapy and all this, and then I am now doing finances. I teamed up with a very powerful company who's filled with integrity, and I have a huge heart connection with, and it's amazing. And those aspects all coming together, it just fell into my lap. I wasn't even looking for
Yeah,
it.
you weren't even looking for it.
I wasn't even looking for it, but I knew it was like every cell in my whole entire energetic field said, "Yep." And I was just jumping in, just swimming along, just not even, And then I realized that my grandmother, who was one of my favorite people on the planet, we need to do an episode about my grandmother's stories, because they are hilarious. So that some of the things that woman has said, holy smokes. Okay, so anyway, she was one of my biggest mentors, right? She did this. She did what I'm doing in finances, and I'll never forget even those stories, and how much she helped people. And so I would have never thought that I could have brought all this together, and that I could have a deep connection with people in that way, and truly bring radical healing and power and into their financial world, more than they ever thought they could have. And so it's and to connect with people on that level, especially when there are so many issues in the spiritual community with money, or having money or not money, or is money good, is money bad, and it can be a seat of power, and it can create issues. So again, like bringing all this together, and just unapologetically, yes,
That's the key word right there, is like being unapologetic for who you are and what you offer the world, and really owning it in a way where you can integrate it and do what you came here to do. I mean, we're no good to anyone if we're constantly like excusing ourselves and apologizing for who we are, or where we've been, or what we've done. Like, we need to make amends with ourselves. We need to make amends with our past, with our perpetrators, and really just claim the wholeness and the totality of ourselves, so that we can embody our mission and really make the world the place we want to live in, instead of expect it to be handed to us, or play this victim role of poor me. Like, enough of that already. Like, I did that for a long period of time. I felt purposeful and driven, but I was always with this like tear in my field of like allowing the perpetrator in again and again and again, until I finally said, enough is enough. I'm done. Like, I deserve to experience love in the physical form. I deserve to feel what pleasure feels like in my body, what love and unconditionally loving, healthy, wholesome relationships feel like. Damn it, I'm going to figure that out, even if every single person around me looks like the toxic devil that they were, I'm going to figure it out. So thank you for listening, everyone, because you have helped me find a beautiful, healthy relationship, to feel more grounded, to come out of the closet, to integrate my world. So now my school knows all about my podcast, and my podcast knows that I am a spiritual teacher, in case you didn't know that. And we are doing the integration work. we're healing, and there's so much more to come. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Satya, for holding this space with me.
Thank you, Leah.
Yeah, see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you'd like to contact us and stay in touch with us, you can find us at lovesexagenda.com. That's lovesexagenda.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, Love, Sex, and the Hidden Agenda.
Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi